a convincing first round victory, which by law he should have picked up 50% plus one of the votes. This was the narrative that was generated at the end of 2020's election declaration results. Naturally, under the Constitution, as we have seen before in 2013, the National Democratic Congress decided to access their rights under the Constitution to mount a presidential election petition. So they did. They went to court, Supreme Court as it is, the court of first instance, Supreme Court, and mounted a presidential election petition. It was mounted ferociously, and at all material times, the quarrel between the two sets of lawyers was that the lawyers for the president, who was sued in the matter because he's the beneficial, he has the beneficial interest of the results as declared by Jean Mensa. The law that protects, or the law that prescribes the election petition also says who you should sue. So the person to sue is the one who is the loser of the presidential elections, and he sues the winner as the first respondent, and then he sues the Electoral Commission as the second respondent, and that's what happened. Okay, so the quarrel among the two lawyers at that time was that the lawyers for the president, the winner of the election, were saying that the lawyers for the President Mahama and the NDC have not been able to demonstrate before the court any real evidence that suggests that something untoward happened. It was back and forth, and the court did actually ask Johnson Asiedu Nketia that do you have results so that we can compare to what the Electoral Commission brought, which is really what an election petition is about. An election petition is about the fact that I have collated my results. The results I collated, which I did it faithfully, does not tally with the results as published by the Electoral Commission, and therefore the Supreme Court will look at this results and that and then do the analysis, because we know about the trajectory of how election results are built. There's a polling station, which is where the voting occurs, and at the polling station, counting occurs after the close of poll. All candidates and their agents are there, and that counting is documented, is recorded, and it is the tabulation of all the polling stations, results from all the polling stations, that then brings the aggregate of the national outcome. So if I have polling station results that are different from Electoral Commission's polling station results, it's very simple for the Supreme Court to reconcile that, because then they will say that for a polling station results to be sacrosanct, it must be on a pink sheet or a yellow sheet, whatever color the Electoral Commission decides, and then it must be signed by the agent. So that's a very simple way of doing it. Johnson Asiedu Nketia and the NDC did not bring any such thing before the court. In 2013, there were a lot of documents brought to the court to indicate overvoting and all of that. Johnson Asiedu Nketia and NDC did not bring anything to court. So the accusation was back and forth in that regard. NDC insisted that they had a case, and then when they lost, they didn't agree on the defeat. Now, this is very important, because after that, the NDC determined a certain nomenclature for the Supreme Court, derogatory nomenclature. They called them the unanimous FC, and this was something repeated by President Mahama himself. At the recent bar conference, we know that Attorney General Godfredame came up for accusations from the NDC people when he was very concerned about President Mahama's description of the Supreme Court as a unanimous FC. Maybe I should have showed you that video. Now, President Mahama's description of the unanimous FC, quote and unquote, was because, as Attorney General said, fundamentally based on the election petition that he lost. The Attorney General said in the speech that he lost the election petition because there was no basis. Okay, so that matter ended. Now, the tape comes out, and we hear what Johnson Asiedu Nketia said. I'm going to take you into the tape, but let me remind you of what happened in the court. What did Asiedu Nketia tell the court? At the time he was speaking to the court, from the tape today, he ought to have known all the details about the matter. Does it mean that he perjured himself? I don't know. The court will make those determinations. I don't know. But does it mean that he spoke some untruth? You determine that, viewers. When I show you what he said in court and what he said on the tape, you make that determination. As we said, he's running for chairmanship of the party on Saturday. We don't want to say too much. After Saturday, when he comes out of the race, then we can deal with him. For now, we have to give him peace of mind to focus on his election. But this is what happened. Okay. So these are the texts, all right, and I hope that they can show. Is it impossible to show it to the viewers like we used to do? Okay, so let's get it. So court is speaking. It says, then I want to be very clear on these issues too. In all the figures that were mentioned as the valid votes cast and all those things, you were saying if the figures were correct and that there were inconsistencies in the figures. In your own calculation, what were the total valid votes cast in the presidential election on 7 December 2020? Now, this is a question the court is asking Asiedu Nketia. Let's take the question again. One of the judges speaking, he says, then I want to be very clear on these issues too. In all the figures that were mentioned as the valid votes cast, all those things, you were saying that if the figures were correct and that there were inconsistencies in those figures, in your own calculation, what were the total valid votes cast in the presidential election on December 7, 2020? Okay, go to the next one. Let's deal with it. All right. So this is the next one. If they can open it up a little bit. It says that, my lords, those calculations are reserved for a meeting for us to reconcile because the first respondent herself kept changing the figures. So Asiedu Nketia was asked that from his calculation, what is the total valid votes cast? He said, my lords, those calculations are reserved for a meeting. We now know the truth. The truth of the matter is that when Johnson Asiedu Nketia was asked this question by the court, he didn't know. The truth of the matter is that the NDC collation system had broken down. They were not able to collate. They have not been able to collate 2016. They were not able to collate 2020. They were not able to collate even 2012. They were not able to collate 28. Now, NDC insiders will tell you that in 2008, if the election had been declared anyway, they didn't have anything to collate the figures. Johnson Asiedu Nketia was General Secretary at that time already. He was General Secretary in 08. He was General Secretary in 12. He was General Secretary in 16. He was General Secretary in 20. He blames Ofosu Ampofu for the fiasco in 2020. Fair enough, that's their internal mechanisms, I don't know. But who takes the blame for the rest? So when Asiedu Nketia was answering the court this way, he was aware that they didn't have anything. Okay, no, they didn't have anything not because of a problem, but out of their own dereliction of duty, because the Electoral Commission provided pink sheets for every political party polling agent, especially for NDC and MPP, all over the country. That process was paid for by the taxpayer. So if Johnson Asiedu Nketia refuses to use that process to give us a clean election, then he has to ask questions to answer after the Congress. He definitely has questions to answer after the Congress because taxpayer paid for something so that NDC will have their results, MPP will have their results, then we have a clean election. If you sat on that and you were derelict in your duty, you cannot come and hold the whole country to ransom, which is what they did with the taxpayers' money again in the election petition. Today he's confessing to it. Let's move on. Let's change it and let's see what's next. Okay. The Asiedu Nketia goes, it says, when we discovered this discrepancy, it was difficult to even know which figures are correct. Okay, move on to the next one. All right. So the court asked him, Asiedu Nketia, so you do not know how many valid votes were cast? That's the court question. Let's go to the next one very quickly, please. Okay, it says, I do not have them here. So he attends the court and tells the court that he doesn't have the information. He says he doesn't have it. The information the court is looking for. What information is the court looking for? You are complaining about the figures of the Electoral Commission. And you said there are discrepancies in there. What are we comparing it to? Because the taxpayer paid for NDC and MPP to have their results. How did they do that? They paid for pink sheets, and Electoral Commission is obliged to give the pink sheets to them. Or Electoral Commission is so obliged so that all political parties have all the pink sheets of all the 39,000 polling stations. A calculation of that will give you the results. If some pink sheets are different from the Electoral Commission, the court will be able to assess it. So what, in your opinion, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, was the total valid votes cast? He says, I do not have them here. That's what he told the court. But from the tape, at the time he was saying this, he knew that they don't have it. But let's move on. Let's get on very quickly to the next one. Okay. The court says, what figures from your calculations did the second respondent get as the total valid votes cast in his favor? Okay, so second respondent then is the Akufo-Addo, the presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party. The court is asking from your own calculations, and the court is asking your own calculation because the taxpayer has paid so that the NDC would have their own calculation. That's the fact of the matter. Taxpayers have been taxed, and all the money that Parliament okayed for the electoral commission process, the election process, the money that Parliament okayed, which is taxpayers' money, in the itemized bill, the Electoral Commission is expected to deliver to the NDC and MPP pink sheets at the expense of the taxpayer. And that's why the Supreme Court can ask the General Secretary of the losing party that what figures from your calculations did the second respondent get as far as the total valid votes cast? In the earlier petition, the 2013, Gloria Kufuor and his team went to court and said that, told the court, in some instances, you have to subtract 200,000 from John Dramani Mahama and add it to Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo because of this and that and that. They had those facts in front of them when they presented it to the court. So Asiedu Nketia was asked that, as far as you are concerned, what is the total votes that you believe accrue to Nana Akufo-Addo? Because you should have it. Let's move on and see what he says. Let's move on. Let's move on. He says, my lords, I do not have those figures here. When he says he doesn't have the figures here, he's suggesting that he has the figures elsewhere. It's not, you knew why you were coming to the court. I presume that he knew why he was coming to the court. So what is, I don't have the figures here? Okay, let's move on. It's getting long. Okay, the court says, Mr. Asiedu Nketia held the court. And I remember this was from Chief Justice Eniyeboah. He says, held the court. When you started giving evidence, you said you had representatives across 275 constituencies. You said you put agents and they were to collate the figures. Then he's asking you from that, what figure did you get? You Asiedu Nketia. You said you had 275 agents at constituency level. What figure did you get? Move on. Let's see what Asiedu Nketia says. Asiedu Nketia repeats, he says, my lord, I have not brought that figure to court. He says, my lord, this is the last one. He says, my lords, I have not brought that figure to court. Now, when a key witness, a star witness of an election petition, answers questions this way, and then the unanimous decision of the court is that the petition fails, then the court is accused of being biased. If you were the judge, I mean, if you are the one who loves NDC more than anyone else, and you have this situation, you are confronted by this situation as a judge, where is your results? I don't have it. How do you know that the Electoral Commission's results, there were discrepancies in it? Because we are waiting for a meeting where we reconcile the figures. Okay, fair enough. Did you have 275 agents in 275 constituencies? Yes, my lord, we did. What results did they bring to you? And from the results they brought to you, what did Akufo-Addo get? My lord, I have not brought that figure to the court. Now, if you have this kind of situation, and the court rules against you, and you say the court is biased, I mean, that one, I truly understand it. And that's why when the Attorney General went ballistic against them at the bar conference, it was a big deal. He wasn't going against NDC, he was going against these things that draw democracy back. You know, these are things that draw the Achilles heels of democracy. It draws democracy back. Dishonesty and all of these things completely draws democracy back. So he may have been outraged that, look, if you are going to court, you have to present a case so that we can build our democracy. You go to court with such a flat case, it falls on his face, you are told that you have lost the case unanimously, and then you say, hey, we have been robbed. The court has robbed us. It's a unanimous FC. Till today, the NDC has not conceded defeat because Johnson Asiedu Nketia has led the NDC to believe that the election results were not correct. Okay, now the tape pops up. Let's go and hear. He spoke in Twi. We'll try our best to translate some of them. Let's go and hear some of the things that he said in the tape, and then we can understand where we are, and then hopefully we can bring this part to an end. Let's go and hear play the tape.
Was chief executive into Obia Juma or reported to me. Into Obi Beka said, Woman reported to me into collation, no, Uncle so when the chef for Metiasia. At the proof of it, he said, you will nipa or this dream. And on a collation, the system of the bar said, and a robust and strong fire and fire collation. You collate 5 regions now, or say a crashing. And until now, cry or honor. Until I say a court. And now, yes, yen manual collation. Yes, once when you pound cottage, a pinches in running family. And now, Chairman San Cotton Committee, no, so I have collation, so no one a better collation. Now, I'm going to Okofa University 4B number 10. There are times so say me ko jina da cabo. One find results from Rana Minfangwa. Results are on the man. They say, would the jina da cabo be as a defend their in the Guasi? And until yet to me fast and man of comfort. And now, almost any young court lawyer Chicataho, and yes, was our documents. Well, you are someone can just say, come once and public. That's how they call it Chikata. Yako ko Jaima no so you hear more addition of free or say Momaji money. So Mujo are granted. Zabia might say no Namodi Coco to their Mokope Monoya. Namidi meeting in Koyaside. I don't think they call to our Mubisa said, there is also here, because the fire is also be up. Say no, they are not here. Maybe name to connection until they may and say, Sammy Chamaya. Sa said in Semunu Emma. The problem with party mo any ye penny for no be any MPP for so see a daddy. Intima ye nkamema call retirement kame tuna kase me kotra ma kura se ahome ye mu ni wie na mkase mo man poswa ye mema meboa enti ka nanti ami kasa brebe zen kamemre. But me japa to know why be born don't come clean.
Says that if he is chairman, these things will not happen. But what's the position of the chairman of the chairman and the general secretary, who has more power to control these things? I would have thought the general secretary, but I'm not sure how the NDC system operates. But I would have thought the general secretary, isn't it? Anyway, but he says that he was general secretary, so he couldn't control it, chairman will control it. But clearly, the real issues about this is when he appeared before the court and he swore on oath to speak the truth, nothing but the truth, the whole truth. We have to determine whether he did discharge himself in that moral obligation or not. Now, I have here a statement that I'm sure some of you have seen. It's by Alliance for Foot Soldiers Advocacy, AFA, they call themselves. And it's a statement dated yesterday, 14th December 2022. And it's entitled, Asiedu Nketia, John Mahama, and the NDC must apologize to the Supreme Court justices. AFA says. Okay, so it's as follows. Let's read the details. Alliance for Foot Soldiers Advocacy is alarmed by the contents of a leaked audio tape, believed to be the voice of NDC General Secretary Johnson Asiedu Nketia. Okay, it says, in the said audio, which has since gone viral, the outgoing chief scribe and national chairman, hopefully of the opposition National Democratic Congress, is heard admitting, among other things, that his party, the NDC, was unable to collate its results during the 2020 general elections due to an internal IT system breakdown. That's what Johnson Asiedu Nketia said. Okay, number 3, it says, as if that is not enough, Asiedu Nketia also disclosed that the evidence his party sought to rely upon in challenging the validity of the election of President Akufo-Addo at the Supreme Court in 2021 was utterly useless, inadmissible, and same could not have overturned the outcome of the election results. This is very, very instructive because that's what Asiedu Nketia said. But as I'm saying, he's running for chairmanship. Let's leave him. When he has won the chairmanship, we can come and discuss these matters, whether, and our concern is whether or not that Johnson Asiedu Nketia properly discharged the moral obligation attendant upon the oath that he took in the court. Whether Asiedu Nketia discharged the moral obligation attendant upon the oath that he took in court, swearing to speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. When he took that oath, and when he said the things he said, now knowing what we know, the question is, did he discharge the moral obligation? If he didn't, what is the remedy? What is the remedy? Anyway, let's move on to 4. AFA says that AFA, they say, is scandalized by the confession of Asiedu Nketia, given the fact that the NDC, led by former President Mahama, has since March 2021 bastardized the justices of the Supreme Court at every occasion, describing them as unanimous FC and appendages of President Akufo-Addo following the dismissal of his defective election petition. It goes on, we find it puzzling how the petitioner, a former president of the republic, knowing very well that he had no case, as has been revealed by General Mosquito, proceeded to the apex court of the land to waste precious time of Ghanaians. The sudden silence of vociferous Asiedu Nketia in these past few days that the leaked audio has been in circulation only confirms the authenticity of the tape and the contents therein. I think that's something that we need to see. Asiedu Nketia, he likes to respond to stuff. And as I say, he's a very intelligent man. You have to credit him with that. Very, very intelligent man. And he likes to respond to these things. He has a way of doing it. He'll be laughing and talking about it. But since this tape leak, he hasn't said anything about it. We can understand that he's campaigning. He's concentrating on his campaign. Next week, after he has been elected chairman of the NDC, we need to deal with this matter. Because we can't have our elders doing that. Today we are saying it softly, and this is my way of saying it softly. Next week, once he's chairman of the NDC, he has to come and answer these questions. All right. Okay. Okay. So let's move on then. Number 6, they said that in the light of the above, and this is the last one, AFA calls on Mr. Mahama, that's President Mahama, Asiedu Nketia, and NDC to render an unqualified apology to the justices of the Apex Court, Jean Mensah-led Electoral Commission, and the Ghanaian public at large. It is our submission that the dignity and authority of the judiciary and the EC must be upheld at all times for the growth of Ghana's multi-party democracy. Signed by Sir Obama Pokwasi, his executive secretary of AFA, voice for the voiceless. That's very, very important. Okay, it's 5 minutes past 10 o'clock. So I was talking to you about the video in which the Attorney General spoke very brutally about the description of Supreme Court judges as unanimous FC. Now we know the truth. Just to conclude this segment, here is the Attorney General's video.
Mr. President, the judiciary has shown consistently that it is the last line of defense for our country. It was thus with great dismay and embarrassment that I heard a person who has occupied the highest office of state, former President John Mahama, recently launched an unwarranted attack on the integrity of Ghana's judiciary. And I observed that this was really the latest installment of systematic and caustic attacks on our court by the former president, albeit unjustified. And I observed that this was really, and I'm compelled to comment on same in this address because they border on the security of the state and constitute a deliberate pattern of conduct aimed at undermining the independence of the judiciary, an arm of government whose autonomy is crucial to its proper functioning. Such conduct is clearly deplorable, coming from one who has occupied the highest office of president and aspires again to that office. At this moment, it's important for all to note that I express this sentiment not because I stand in opposition to former President Mahama as a politician. My dismay is founded more on the fact that I'm a lawyer, and every lawyer ought to be concerned about these kinds of views expressed by a political leader in this country. It would be a sore omission if I fail to recognize that there have been other leaders of the political party to which the former president belongs. I do not recall either the late Jerry John Rawlings or the late Professor John Evans Atta-Mills mount such a systematic and deliberate campaign of hate against the judiciary. In fact, never once did Professor Mills, Mr. Mahama's former boss, launch any attack at all on the judiciary. Closely examined, one will notice that the source of the former president's unjustified attacks on the judiciary is the unanimous dismissal by the Supreme Court of his rather porous election petition, which indeed, in my respectful view, was dead on arrival and bound to be dismissed by any court worth its salt in the country. One cannot fail to note that his petition before the court in 2021 was a bundle of incompetent claims devoid of any substance. As stated already, the allegations of wrong aggregation of votes, and vote pardon, which he put before the court, collectively involved only 6,622 votes, a figure which could not in any way affect the outcome of the presidential election. It is therefore perplexing how, if such a petition is dismissed by the court, it should form the basis for an allegation of unfair treatment by the court. It ought to be understood that it is the duty of the court to administer justice according to law. The court is not a mercy chamber to serve justice based on sympathy or affection. I observed with even greater worry that the former president, who is a non-lawyer, made this comment at a meeting of the legal committee of his political party. None of the lawyers raised a finger to contest the wrong and dangerous propaganda by the former president. By their silence, they became abettors of the propagation of hate against the judiciary.
So that was the Attorney General's statement when he spoke about this matter. As I said, it's a day to sort of take it easier than normal, and Johnson Asiedu Nketia is heading to run for the chairmanship of the NDC on Saturday. We wish him well. After he has been elected chairman, we will deal with this matter. Okay, let me go to text messages. I'll begin with you, Eunice. What are people saying about this story?
Okay. Governance is a serious business. How come a party which cannot even collate election results rule or lead Ghana? NDC party is never an alternative. From Stephen Kweku Abuaje, Prince Harry says Asiedu Nketia ought to be charged for perjury. The state must take him on. And lastly, from Alex to 4, I will be happy if Asiedu Nketia and former President Mahama are sent to court for organizing demonstrations in Ghana against the presidential election results and for putting the judiciary in a bad faith for their judgment on the same election. Petition, Hamburg, Germany. Over to you, Net.
Good evening, Paul. For the umpteenth time, I've listened to the Asiedu Nketia leaked audio, and I'm still in a state of shock. I'm shocked at the fact that Asiedu Nketia and Mahama knew the NDC had no collated result and yet took all of us on a wild goose chase at the Supreme Court and even deflected blame in any direction they could without reflecting on their own failures as NDC leaders. I hate to say I told you so, but let's be straight up about this. Some of us sounded the alarm bell. We told you the current crop of NDC leaders were screwing the party for all it's worth. Coming from Mufala Tamale Sabonjida, Apostle, so the respected and revered lawyer, Chachu Chikata, knew very well Mahama had no case, yet agreed to lead a crusade to tarnish the image of the judges of the Supreme Court and the Electoral Commission. Wow, such characters don't deserve to be celebrated in our society. And lastly, from Dachi, Asiedu Nketia needs no peace, Paul. Let's be on him. Such a hypocritical man. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you. The NDC has no iota of truth in its veins. It looks as if their party was formed on lies and deception. No wonder Asiedu Nketia is worshipped in that party. He is blatant and chronic liar. He has deceived the public on several occasions just to paint NDC good. The Baba Taylor. It's sad that we don't have any other formidable opposition party in Ghana apart from the NDC. I would not be surprised if General Mosquito wins 65% of the votes on Saturday, because the delegates only believe in violence and the only violence character is Asiedu Nketia. Gasty man. Okay, so Anita Ade, she says she's dedicating the Shatawale song to the Vice President, the President, and Hon Ken Ofori Atta. Okay, over to you.
Right. Next, and Sean watching us from the Tema East constituency says, hello, Paul. I want to find out if there is any legal implications to this effect after the case has been heard and the surface of this tape, which goes to buttress the decision of the Supreme Court justices, but were run down by the NDC party and its flag bearer. And SK Abuaji says, you have no evidence about the 2020 election results, but you people wasted our precious time in court. You can't collate simple election results, but you want power. Let's get serious. Now, this is from Peter Kwesi Abua. He says, if you give your puppy to the chop bar operator to keep for you, and upon visiting her, you find out that your puppy has grown lean, you don't take the puppy from her to give it to a porridge seller to keep it for you. How can the NDC solve what is difficult for even the NPP? Okay. And lastly, Jacob watching us from London, the UK says, Paul, I think the court asked for the NDC collated results because, as Asiedu Nketia said, they had representatives at all polling stations in all 275 constituencies.
Now, that matter, that the court asking for the results, it's a kind of economic and legal matter because the taxpayer pays for that. So that's why the court is feeling confident to ask for that results from the NDC, because they know that the taxpayer has paid for it. There's another text message here. The text message here says that it was a grand agenda to discredit Jean Adukwe Mensah and the whole electoral process, but the judges were so wise to read in between the lines. I think that's true for all of us who are calling for Jean Mensah to mount the box and be interrogated. We are now feeling sorry to have pushed that. Assuming that happened, it would have meant that these the petitioners did not have any matter. They just came there to try and embarrass somebody. Because some of us were thinking that Jean Mensah should really mount the box and answer the questions. But the courts felt it was not necessary because, as he said, the court must have read through it. Okay, a few more text messages come in. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your messages. Some people are complaining about poor sound, and we are hearing that is on our analog situation. The sound quality on our analog situation is quite bad. We'll find a way to deal with that. But I hope on social media you can hear us clearly. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we now focus through our attention on the NDC Congress of Saturday. We have various dimensions of analysis for you. Who's going to win the chairman? Who's going to win the general secretary? Hopefully when we come back, our documentary will be ready. We'll be right back.
The world has gathered for football's greatest showpiece, and Betway is giving you the chance to win on the cup in Qatar. Score free entries to win a share of 3 million Ghana cedis across the tournament. Enter our daily draws to win a guaranteed 30,000 Ghana cedis every match day, from the group stages to the final. It's a full month of incredible action. Only at betway.com.gh. Terms and conditions apply. Regulated by the Gaming Commission of Ghana.
Level,
okay.
My level. Bandana for Ghana, bang bang.
Okay, so that one you're going too pro.
Too pro, eh?
Too pro, you know.
Okay.
So I play stuff that, you know, motivates me anytime I enter the studio and I want to work. You know, I have this song that I play so much.
That motivates you. I like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
Lean on me, you know.
Oh, lean on me.
Yeah, lean on me is a movie.
When you are not strong.
Yeah.
I'll be your friend.
Yeah, I'll be your friend.
Give us that one. That's a good song. I've not heard it in a while.
So
So viewers, you can sing with us. You can sing along.
Okay.
Shatawale is going to deliver Lean on Me. Okay, we're ready soon to show you our NDC documentary. It's not that long, but we had gone into the archives to look at the history of their chairman and general secretary, and also make a prediction of who is likely to win. Before then, though, people are asking that you showed the Godfrey Dame response to President Mahama's unanimous FC. You didn't show President Mahama saying that. Here is the video in which President Mahama talked about unanimous FC.
Recently, so badly has the image of our judiciary deteriorated that many of our citizenry openly make mockery of our justice system and of our justices. The phrase, go to court, is these days met with derisive laughter instead of hope that one will truly get justice if he went to the courts. If people are not poking fun about politics and inducements being used to sway the hand of justice in the lower courts, then it is poking fun and making statements about the 7-0 of the unanimous FC. One of the scariest existential threats to any democracy is when citizens think their judiciary holds no value for them or no use to them. And this is the security threat that the national security apparatus tried to draw the attention of the nation to recently, but was poorly received by the president and his party. It is scary because it threatens the peace and stability of our democracy, and we must quickly correct this fast-spreading notion. If care is not taken, we'll get to a stage where people will have no qualms about taking the law into their own hands, because they do not have the confidence that they can get any justice from the system. There is therefore the urgent need for the Ghanaian judiciary to work to win the trust and confidence of the citizenry and erase the widely held perception of hostility and political bias in legal proceedings at the highest courts of the land. Unfortunately, we have no hope that the current leadership of our judiciary can lead such a process of change. We can only hope that a new Chief Justice will lead a process to repair the broken image that our judiciary has acquired over the last few years. It is therefore worrying that there remains deep-seated perceptions that institutions like the General Legal Council exists to intimidate lawyers who are critics of this government and deprive qualified students from studying for professional law certificates. How do you raise confident, independent, and creative lawyers with a focus on problem solving when during their training you tie their hands behind their back and suggest that they learn to accept oppressive rules without contest? In addition to this is the inexplicable ambivalence of the government and the government-controlled General Legal Council to meaningfully expand access to legal education. NDC stands by its promise ahead of the 2020 elections that it will do all that is possible to expand access to professional legal education and ensure that all who are qualified and aspire to become members of the bar are able to do so.
So the former president spoke about a wide range of issues, including the last one he talked about access to legal education. However, he talked about the unanimous absence. So we showed you the tape. That's the evidence of it. It's 21 minutes past the top of the hour. 10 o'clock now. People are telling me that they just joined the program. They didn't hear the Asiedu Nketia tape, all sorts of things. People can worry on this social media. And you know, when you're on live TV, your phone is on and people have your WhatsApp number, they're just texting you. Really can't say, you know, they say, please play it again. And when they text you, you see, they are our viewers, and all our viewers are very important. So when one viewer says, I want to see something, we are obliged to show it to him, because we don't know how many other viewers are feeling so, but cannot text us because they don't have our number. So we use that viewers' suggestions and requests to be a microcosm of the suggestions and requests of our viewers. Here is the Johnson Asiedu Nketia tape again. It's about 3 minutes long. He was confessing to no results achieved by the NDC in 2020. Here is it, final one.
No, Craig says, our officers meaning one reported to me, say, overall boss, chief executive. Into Bia Juma, one more reported to me. Into Bibeka said, one reported to me, into collation, no, uncle, so the chef for Metiasia. At the chief of it, he said, you will nip out of this dream. And on a collation, the system of the bar said, a robust and strong fire and fire collation. You collate 5 regions now, or say a crashing. And until no cry or honor. In the air say a cocotte. And now, a senior, young manual collation. Yes, once when you pound cogigi, a pinches in Ranian family. And now, tell my son, coaching committee, no, so I have collation, so no one a better collation. Now, I'm going to talk of University 4B, no better chance. There are times so say me go jinanda kabo. One find results from Rana Minfangwa. Results from the man. They say, would the jinanda kamba be as a defend their in the guasi? And unti yet mean fast hard name and comfort. And now, almost any young court lawyer Chikata. And yes, was our documents made. When you are someone can just say, I can't want some problem. That's how they call a Chicata. You call a coach Jaiman, or no, so you will more a ditching or fray or say, Momaji for money. So, would you are granted? Zambia, my dear. Say, no, Namodi Coco to the Moko Monoya. Namidi meeting for your side. And until the court trial, Mubisa said, my results were here, and Cassay, and 5 results be up. Said no, they won't tell. Maybe them to the collation, until they may, and they said, Say, Mimi, a charmaya. Sir said in Semunu, Emma. Now, your problem with party move any penny for Nubi, any MPP for Sumacy a dready. Timon, and Kamema call retirement, Kamitman Casem, Cotam or Kurasi Abome. You moon in Nibianam Casem, Mumman Posua. yɛbɛma bi meboa nti nka nanti a me kasa brɛ bebree sɛ nka memmerɛ ba megya party no wɔ hɔ a yɛbɛbɔ no donkom krinkrinkrin.
Okay, so welcome back to the show, and we are putting it together to get our documentary ready. But let's take text messages. A lot of them are coming in. Let me start with you, Eunice, again.
Abdurrahman says, where is the video of Asiedu Nketia cross-examination by the panel justices of the 2021 election petition? Kinsley Nanamwako says, I can remember NDC lawyers all granting interviews and lambasting the judiciary for not allowing the EC chair to mount the box. Meanwhile, you had nothing and had done no homework. Oh my God, NDC Pa, Annette?
So Kobe Johnson says, NDC is Ghana's biggest problem. Posterity will surely be the judge. Watching live from London, Paul, you and your team always delivers. Iti Mensawa, he says, NDC is a disgrace. So you really deceived your members on the election petition? Fosu Achre Bernard says, what is wrong with the NDC? They should be serious. And he's also asking why the EC refused to testify. Lastly, from Abdul Rahif, Paul, we want a video, not the transcript of the exchanges between Asiedu Nketia and the justices of the Supreme Court. Over to you, Karen.
Okay, thank you. Master Planner Junior says, whether Asiedu Nketia or Chairman Ofosu Ampofo, Ghanaians are not ready to bring back this party back to power. The NDC has a political party, is not an alternative to this NPP government. Greetings to Hon Akosua Menu, Deputy CEO. Over to you.
Right. Jude watching us from Taifa said, Paul, the NDC never went to court on pink sheet issues. They were there because the EC's declaration was wrong. That is why they were challenging the declaration. Facts are not emotions. Akwesi watching us from Kumasi says, from what Asiedu Nketia said, it means President Mahama also knew he didn't have any evidence and yet filed the petition. How can such a character lead the nation again? Okay, Malik watching us from Ifiakuma in Takoradi says, according to Asiedu Nketia, GM lost the 2020 presidential elections and they went to court with fabricated evidence. 1. What does this reveal to you about the JM and the NDC? 2. Should JM apologize for misleading Ghanaians? And 3. Are you now convinced that the NDC cares more about power than Ghana? Right. And Albert says, hi, good evening, Paul. Please, I'm urging my party, the NPP, to organize a press conference after they're done with their National Congress elections so the Ghanaians will know the real NDC party, because Asiedu Nketia's voice is really a security. Okay. Carlos Kamal from Nima says, good evening, Mr. Paul. Did I remember Mr. Asiedu Nketia swore the oath before testifying to the Supreme Court, and now you turn and discredit yourself? Please, Mr. Nketia, you need to apologize to Ghanaians for wasting our taxpayers' money, okay? And Desmond says he must be saying those things just to make Ofosu Ampofo unpopular to give way to him. This is from Master Planner Junior Kintampo, and he says, whether Asiedu Nketia or Chairman Ofosu Ampofo, Ghanaians are not ready to bring back this doomsday party to power. He continues, the NDC is a political party. It is not an alternative to this NPP government. Greetings to Honorable Akosua Menu, Deputy CEO for NYA.
Okay, so the NDC goes to Congress. The big story this weekend is that the NDC goes to Congress on Saturday to elect a national chairman, a national general secretary, national organizer, deputy national organizer. We have put together this 12-minute documentary that sort of captures the entire story. We made it as short as possible so that everyone could see it. Maybe we'll play it twice. It's 10:30 right now. Here it is. At the end of this week, the National Democratic Congress will attend its 10th National Delegates Congress to elect national officers. The principal contest is about the chairmanship, where incumbent Samuel Ofosu Ampofo, who is also former national organizer of the party and former minister for local government, will encounter the surprise challenge from his comrade and incumbent general secretary, the key party stalwart Johnson Asiedu Nketia. Nketia had surprised many with his decision to challenge the man with whom many believe that he had formed a very solid working relationship. But that is not the full story about Saturday's contest. The position of the General Secretary, which has become vacant as a result of Asiedu's exit, will now become the hotbed for serious exchanges between two former fundamentalists of the Professor Mills philosophy, former Sports Minister Elvis Efriye Ankra and former Minister for Agriculture Fifi Kwete. They are competing alongside incumbent Deputy General Secretary Dr. Otokuno, who is also said to be funded by Valerie Sawyer. Valerie is another Mills fundamentalist. All of this is yet not the full story. So what is the full story? To know that, let's draw back to the beginning and see how the NDC chairmen have emerged.
Atami John Mama NDC double Atami say NDC double John Mama NDC Atami say NDC double John Mama NDC Abisa NDC double John Mama.
At the beginning of the NDC, they, the founding fathers of the party, including Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, were looking for a political tradition. They either had to build one or to hijack one.
I advocated very strongly that we should try and set up a political party which will promote the values of the PNDC. I said it's not enough just to get out of office. You know, we should, if you believe in what you are doing and you believe that those values were worth continuing, then we should set up a party that will continue those values. And again, I advised my colleagues, I said, look, the PPA have been there, they have a tradition. The CPP have been there, they have a tradition. They have a network. We don't have any. So let us set up a network before we lift the ban. You see?
So it would appear that the NDC kept its outward appearance as a mass-based socialist party, but its main policy was driven by UP intellectuals, and that accounted for the paradox of the PNDC-NDC, such that they keep a socialist outlook, but policies seem to be very center-right. It would have been this arrangement that led the founders to agree that all their party chairmen will be drawn from the NDC-UP tradition, so their first joint chairmen were Alhaji Isifu Ali. Now, who is Isifu Ali? Isifu Ali is the same man who was made Minister for Works and Housing during the military junta that conducted the 1966 coup. That junta was led by Afrifa, Kotoka and General Ankra. He, Isifu Ali, was a blue-blood UP person. The other chairman for the co-chairman was Mr. A.A. Munufie, that solid intellectual from the Bono Ahafo region. He, Munufie, was a UP member of parliament and minister for local government under the Buzia administration. Both first chairmen clearly UP. Both of them lasted for 10 years in the job. A.A. Munufie served simultaneously as Ghana's ambassador to Cote d'Ivoire during that period. Then came another contest in 2002, when the NDC was in opposition for the first time. The elders of the party, including Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, believed that the principle of joint chairmanship should continue. In that context, they wanted, once again, two UP-NDC people. They wanted Dr. Obed Asamoah, a former General Secretary of William Oforiatta's UNC, and Alhaji Mahama Idrisu, who was actually the running mate to Pawili at the UNC. Both of them very UP. But Obed Asamoah said no. He wanted a single party chairman who controlled considerable executive authority. The Congress of 2002 therefore had to take a preliminary matter. The Congress had to decide by voting if they wanted a co-chairmanship or a single chairmanship. The Congress held a trade fair, decided after voting on a single chairmanship, and abandoned the idea of co-chairmanship for the NDC forever. When the vote came in that night, Obed Asamoah had won narrowly. He, Obed, thus became the first single chairman of the National Democratic Congress in 2002. Then came Chairman Kwabena J, who became the party's chair in 2005 until 2014. Dr. Kwabena J, also a staunch UP member, therefore continued in the tradition of keeping the NDC chair for UP elements. Kwabena J was a member of parliament for Victor Uso's Popular Front Party in 1979, and in his book, Obed Asamoah talks about how he, Obed, recruited Kwabena J from the UP to join the NDC. It's a story whose twist sees Kwabena J being supported by powerful elements in the NDC, including Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, to challenge his own political patron, Obed Asamoah, and to beat Obed to a resounding victory that saw he, Kwabena J, become the new chairman of the National Democratic Congress. J was chairman until 2014, when it is said that President John Dramani Mahama prevailed upon Alhaji Hudu Yaya to step down from his ambition to be chairman of NDC and allow Potofi to go through. Hudu Yaya was obedient and Potofi became the chairman. It's not obvious which political tradition Potofi belongs to, but there is no clear indication that he was also UP. The next chairman of the NDC is the incumbent ahead of Saturday's event, Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo. The other story ahead of Saturday's contest is about what the leadership of the NDC want. What does John Dramani Mahama want? Because historically, most of the time, the leadership of the NDC has been able to negotiate the chairmanship in a way that there's no problem. Most NDC chairman positions have actually been negotiated. President Mahama himself was able to avoid a presidential contest between Hudu Yaya and Potofi in 2014. So, observers say that this surprise contest between the two giants, Johnson Asiedu Nketia and Chairman Ofosu-Ampofo, has occurred because John Mahama may have decided to secretly support one candidate, but the other candidate may have found out that John Mahama is not supporting him. So who is John Mahama supporting? Well, President Mahama has issued a statement to say that he doesn't support anyone, no candidate. He supports all the candidates who will win the election to work with him towards victory in 2024. At the beginning of his campaign, however, Johnson Asiedu Nketia appeared to have been surrounded by John Mahama loyalists. He put up a spectacular launch whose event streamings look very much like John Mahama's events, most of which are designed and organized by Mr. Dogbe. Plus, he, Asiedu Nketia, said most of the people against his campaign are people who also support Dr. Dufo and therefore do not support President Mahama. He mentioned, for instance, two former executives, Koku Anyidoho and Yabuatin Jan. Both Koku and Yao Jan are actually supporters of Dr. Dufo. So who is likely to win? Let's first consider predictions of the General Secretary. We think that given his wide expanse and sheer longevity with the NDC process, given his unflinching loyalty to Professor Mills, his passion for mass-based politics, we think that Elvis Efriye Ankra might just edge it over Dr. Otokuno. We expect Fifi Kwete to operate as the dark horse. If John Mahama's perennial concern that AWES must be seen as part of the big decision making in NDC were to work on delegates, they might look at Fifi Kwete favorably. Else, we think they'll go for Elvis. On the chairmanship context, we believe that Johnson Asiedu Nketia has taken a major risk and he should be acknowledged for his boldness. He goes into this with all his strength. If he loses, the NDC will see the end of an era. If Asiedu Nketia wins, he must be called the most powerful man in the NDC. To be able to transition from decades as General Secretary straight into chairmanship would be particularly remarkable. Actually, very remarkable. However, given all what has happened this week relating to the leaked tape about the NDC's performance in election 2020, Asiedu Nketia has suffered an image battering. Plus all the events from the Pablo and Sami Jemfi, Broja Jemfi issues, Asiedu Nketia really hangs in the balance. Ofosu has been a successful organizer of the party and very well knows the grassroots. They like him for one thing. They say that Ofosu-Ampofo at least picks his calls and he returns your calls regularly. Well, we think all things being equal, Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo should be able to just edge it over Johnson Asiedu Nketia. But we know that the real pulse will be the one on Saturday at the ballot box at the Accra Sports Stadium. Good luck to both candidates, and please let's have an event-free Congress.
Atami John Mama NDC double. Atami say NDC double. John Mama NDC. Atami say NDC double. John Mama NDC. Atami say NDC double. John Mama.
As our contribution to the Congress, our intellectual support to the Congress, thank you very much for all the team that we just put this together today, running around and clutching at numbers and documents and video editing and all of that. Great show, great work. 20 minutes to the top of the hour. What are people saying about this work? We'll put it again out soon for you to see, and then it will be on our social media page. So those who fell asleep, they can see it on Good Evening Ghana Official tomorrow morning. All right, Eunice, what are people saying?
Caleb Anand says, seriously speaking, following General Mosquito's confession, ex-President Mahama and the NDC should be charged for causing mayhem and death to some Ghanaians during and after the election for sending wrong signals to the public to revolt on the streets. Kabiru Adam also says, Paul, Asiedu Nketia is telling Ghanaians he can't lie. That's why he said in the low court that he has no results with him. NDC. Sekwatri Kwase, Obema Wantuma, Tini Dini from Yuji. And then Gertrude Swahini says, fantastic Paul, no size. Lawmaker Peglo says, even the respected Peace Council was lambasted these NDC people. Annette?
So coming from Cletus Pente, he says, Asiedu Nketia is empty. He is not matured at all. He is not matured to chair the party. Ofosu Ampofo is gentle and matured. Unlike Asiedu Nketia, he does not reveal the party's secret before the opposition. So therefore, he should not be called by the NDC. Also from Bright, Edu Asari, he says, the NDC party is a party of deception and indecision. They only came to create loot and share. Also from Bernard Odu Deborah, Apostle Paul, you are too good, I beg. Nobody does this better than you do. Over to you, Karen.
Okay, Bright Adusiri. He says, bravo for your detailed historic background of the NDC. Kabiru Adam, good evening, Paul. I think the secretaryship position, dear DJ Boyenjum, will win. Over to you.
Erin Mabako from Latabia Koshi says, politics must not be allowed to hijack our consciousness. Those of us who fall into the young adults group must be very vigilant during political rallies to ensure that someone does not use us as weapons of destruction to further their political ends. Let us know that in all things we are one human being with a common destiny. Now this is coming from Mary Gorithi from Kumasi, and she says, good evening, Paul. Please, I want to ask, can the Supreme Court call Mr. Asiedu Nketia and sanction or punish him and Mr. Mahama? Right. Francis, watching us from Fadama, says, based on this song, Ghana, My Happy Home, you played the last time, you have made me good and patriotic. Great. And from K. Boate, he says, Paul, ex-President Mahama once said he sent the case to court to appease their uninformed foot soldiers when he knew they didn't have evidence. Okay. And this last message says, Paul, Asiedu Nketia must be greedy. This is from Desmond. Okay, then. Back to you.
All right. So please get ready, language people, and wish our candidates, wish them the best of luck in Chinese and in French and Arabic. Okay, all right. Let's see the documentary again. As usual, people are saying that it came in the middle. It's another 15 minutes long. All our reporters have been deployed for their work on Saturday. So you tune into Metro TV. We'll be back on DSTV tomorrow. So we'll have enough for the Congress. Okay, so let's see the documentary again. At the end of this week, the National Democratic Congress will attend its 10th National Delegates Congress to elect national officers. The principal contest is about the chairmanship, where incumbent Samuel Ofosu Ampofo who is also former national organizer of the party and former minister for local government, will encounter the surprise challenge from his comrade and incumbent general secretary, the key party stalwart, Johnson Asiedu Nketia. Nketia had surprised many with his decision to challenge the man with whom many believe that he had formed a very solid working relationship. But that is not the full story about Saturday's contest. The position of the general secretary, which has become vacant as a result of Asiedu's exit, will now become the hotbed for serious exchanges between two former fundamentalists of the Professor Mills philosophy, former sports minister Elvis Efriye Ankra and former minister for agriculture Fifi Kwete. They are competing alongside incumbent deputy general secretary Dr. Otokonom, who is also said to be funded by Valerie Sawyer. Valerie is another Mills fundamentalist. All of this is yet not the full story. So what is the full story? To know that, let's draw back to the beginning and see how the NDC chairmen have emerged.
Atami John Mama NDC double Atami say NDC double John Mama NDC Atami say NDC double John Mama NDC
At the beginning of the NDC, they, the founding fathers of the party, including Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, were looking for a political tradition. They either had to build one or to hijack one.
I advocated very strongly that we should try and set up a political party which will promote the values of the PNDC. I said it's not enough just to get out of office. You know, we should, if you believe in what you are doing and you believe that those values were worth continuing, then we should set up a party that will continue those values. And again, I advised my colleagues, I said, look, the PPA had been there, they have a tradition. The CPP have been there, they have a tradition. They have a network. We don't have any. So let us set up a network before we lift the ban. You see?
So it would appear that the NDC kept its outward appearance as a mass-based socialist party, but its main policy was driven by UP intellectuals, and that accounted for the paradox of the PNDC-NDC, such that they keep a socialist outlook, but policies seem to be very center-right. It would have been this arrangement that led the founders to agree that all their party chairmen will be drawn from the NDC-UP tradition, so their first joint chairmen were Alhaji Isifu Ali. Now, who is Isifu Ali? Isifu Ali is the same man who was made Minister for Works and Housing during the military junta that conducted the 1966 coup. That junta was led by Afrifa, Kotoka and General Ankra. He, Isifu Ali, was a blue-blood UP person. The other chairman for the co-chairman was Mr. A.A. Monufie, that solid intellectual from the Bono Ahafo region. He, Monufie, was a UP member of parliament and minister for local government under the Buzia administration. Both first chairmen clearly UP. Both of them lasted for 10 years in the job. A.A. Monufie served simultaneously as Ghana's ambassador to Cote d'Ivoire during that period. Then came another contest in 2002 when the NDC was in opposition for the first time. The elders of the party, including Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, believed that the principle of joint chairmanship should continue. In that context, they wanted, once again, two UP-NDC people. They wanted Dr. Obed Asamoah, a former general secretary of William Oforiatta's UNC, and Alhaji Mahama Idrisu, who was actually the running mate to Pawili at the UNC. Both of them very, very UP. But Obed Asamoah said no. He wanted a single party chairman who controlled considerable executive authority. The Congress of 2002 therefore had to take a preliminary matter. The Congress had to decide by voting if they wanted a co-chairmanship or a single chairmanship. The Congress held a trade fair decided after voting on a single chairmanship and abandoned the idea of co-chairmanship for the NDC forever. When the votes came in that night, Obed Asamoah had won narrowly. He, Obed, thus became the first single chairman of the National Democratic Congress in 2002. Then came Chairman Kwabena J, who became the party's chair in 2005 until 2014. Dr. Kwabena J, also a staunch UP member, therefore continued in the tradition of keeping the NDC chair for UP elements. Kwabena J was a member of parliament for Victor Uso's Popular Front Party in 1979, and in his book, Obed Asamoah talks about how he, Obed, recruited Kwabena J from the UP to join the NDC. It's a story whose twist sees Kwabena J being supported by powerful elements in the NDC, including Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, to challenge his own political patron, Obed Asamoah, and to beat Obed to a resounding victory that saw he, Kwabena J, become the new chairman of the National Democratic Congress. J was chairman until 2014, when it is said that President John Dramani Mahama prevailed upon Alhaji Hudu Yaya to step down from his ambition to be chairman of NDC and allow Potofi to go through. Hudu Yaya was obedient and Potofi became the chairman. It's not obvious which political tradition Potofi belongs to, but there is no clear indication that he was also UP. The next chairman of the NDC is the incumbent ahead of Saturday's event, Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo. The other story ahead of Saturday's contest is about what the leadership of the NDC want. What does John Dramani Mahama want? Because historically, most of the time, the leadership of the NDC has been able to negotiate the chairmanship in a way that there's no problem. Most NDC chairman positions have actually been negotiated. President Mahama himself was able to avoid a presidential contest between Hudu Yaya and Potofi in 2014. So, observers say that this surprise contest between the two giants, Johnson Asiedu Nketia and Chairman Ofosu-Ampofo, has occurred because John Mahama may have decided to secretly support one candidate, but the other candidate may have found out that John Mahama is not supporting him. So who is John Mahama supporting? Well, President Mahama has issued a statement to say that he doesn't support anyone, no candidate. He supports all the candidates who will win the election to work with him towards victory in 2024. At the beginning of his campaign, however, Johnson Asiedu Nketia appeared to have been surrounded by John Mahama loyalists. He put up a spectacular launch whose event trimmings look very much like John Mahama's events, most of which are designed and organized by Mr. Dogbe. Plus, he, Asiedu Nketia, said most of the people against his campaign are people who also support Dr. Dufo and therefore do not support President Mahama. He mentioned, for instance, two former executives, Koku Anyidoho and Yabuatin Jan. Both Koku and Yao Jan are actually supporters of Dr. Dufo. So who is likely to win? Let's first consider predictions of the General Secretary. We think that given his wide expanse and sheer longevity with the NDC process, given his unflinching loyalty to Professor Mills, his passion for mass-based politics, we think that Elvis Efriye Ankara might just edge it over Dr. Otokuno. We expect Fifi Kwete to operate as the dark horse. If John Mahama's perennial concern that AWES must be seen as part of the big decision-making in NDC were to work on delegates, they might look at Fifi Kwete favorably. Else, we think they'll go for Elvis. On the chairmanship context, we believe that Johnson Asiedu Nketia has taken a major risk and he should be acknowledged for his boldness. He goes into this with all his strength. If he loses, the NDC will see the end of an era. If Asiedu Nketia wins, he must be called the most powerful man in the NDC. To be able to transition from decades as General Secretary straight into chairmanship would be particularly remarkable. Actually, very remarkable. However, given all what has happened this week relating to the leaked tape about the NDC's performance in election 2020, Asiedu Nketia has suffered an image battering. Plus all the events from the Pablo and Sami Jemfi, Broja Jemfi issues, Asiedu Nketia really hangs in the balance. Ofosu has been a successful organizer of the party and very well knows the grassroots. They like him for one thing. They say that Ofosu-Ampofo at least picks his calls and he returns your calls regularly. Well, we think all things being equal, Samuel Ofuson-Poffo should be able to just edge it over Johnson Asiedu Nketia. But we know that the real polls will be the one on Saturday at the ballot box at the Accra Sports Stadium. Good luck to both candidates, and please, let's have an event-free Congress.
Atami John Mama NDC double Atami say NDC double John Mama NDC Atami say NDC double John Mama
Your mama NDC double Atami say NDC double. Okay, that's our story for tonight. Just to remind you that Metro TV will be bringing you a live coverage of the event. I will be here. I may be here. I may be there. Don't look for me at the stadium. I'll be in a hoodie. You won't find me. And I'll be sitting near Dr. Omani Buama. So if you see Omani Buama and you see somebody sitting next to him with a hood, that will be me at the Accra Sports Stadium to observe the proceedings as the National Democratic Congress goes into its 10th Delegates Congress. Metro TV will be covering it live. We'll put a flyer up right now. Yes, there you go. So our 2 ladies and 4 gentlemen will be deployed all over the place. We will be supporting them from the back. And I may be here or at the stadium or at the makeshift studio, wherever we are putting it up. So you see our 4 gentlemen and our 2 ladies there. They'll be bringing you the live coverage from Election Central. Metro TV will be bringing you a live coverage of the event. I will be here to give it support. It's 3 minutes to the top of the hour. And we've stopped talking about the World Cup, haven't we? But on Sunday, Argentina will be lining up against France. Many of us black people want France to win because we say that there are more black people in the French team than there are in the Argentine team. But I hope that the World Cup is teaching us a story. Why are there black people who are giving their strength to France? And why can't they give that strength to Nigeria, Senegal, Cameroon, Ghana, and the countries that they come from? We believe that Morocco's entrance into the last 4 of the World Cup. Morocco will be playing their 3rd place game against Croatia. We sincerely believe that Morocco can win that game and become number 3 in the world. At the end of the World Cup, there will be another rating. Morocco might not be number 3 even if they are 3rd, but they will be probably in the top 10, and that will be significant. It may be the first time that an African country is getting its way into the top 10 of the ratings after the World Cup. Now, Africa is getting 9 more places in the next World Cup, fundamentally because of what Morocco has done, getting into the semi-final. As we go along, as the years go along, as the decades go along, as technology helps us, Africa will surely emerge great. Next week, we'll have occasion to talk about everything President Akufo-Addo has been saying in New York that has generated some conversation here in Accra today. We'll take our time and look at it and come back to you next week with that important conversation. So that's Good Evening Ghana for tonight. Now, who's going to win the World Cup on Sunday? I am supporting Argentina for the simple reason that it will be a icing on the cake for the career of Lionel Messi. Messi has given us a lot as football fans. I'm not on Messi and Ronaldo. I am Ronaldo, but we know that Messi has given us a lot as football fans. It will be beautiful for him to earn just another feather in his cap, the glorious World Cup. We've always compared Messi to Diego Maradona. The difference is that Maradona has won the World Cup. In 2010, Maradona took the Argentine team as the coach to the South Africa tournament, hoping that he could guide Messi to win. This was his ambition. Eventually, Diego died, and he's no longer with us. But this will be a fitting tribute to Maradona's love for Messi, which he showed throughout his lifetime. Hopefully, Lionel Messi can win the World Cup and become the 3rd greatest player on the World Cup list. Pele, Maradona, and Ronaldo and Messi. So I'm supporting Argentina for that big game, which is occurring on Sunday. Okay, good luck to our NDC people. We are now going to give them good luck messages in Chinese and in French. First, Chinese.
大家好，晚上好。我们好久没有说中文是吧？
Metro TV, insightful and inspiring moments.